Now last week, we showed you one of the biggest receivers in the history of hi-fi, and just when I thought it couldn't get any bigger, the guys said, hey, we have this Mac 2300 in the shop. You got to do a video. You got to tell them why. This is one of the most famous amps in the history of rock and roll. Before we get started today, guys, give this video a thumbs up, and hey, subscribe to the channel if you're not, because there's so much good audio content coming your way. And hey, we have a question for you guys. What other hi-fi has a good rock and roll story behind it? Now, in 1971, McIntosh came out with the 138-pound power amp, the MC 2300, one of the largest power amps that I have ever seen and that they probably have ever made. It was 300 watts per channel in stereo, but you can use it as a monoblock at 600 watts. Now it'll work in 8 ohms, 4 ohms, 2 ohms, 1 ohm, a half ohm, and a quarter ohm speakers. Now that's beyond me as to how that would equate wattage wise, or how you would use it, or what you would use it for. But that just tells me that this can probably power pretty much anything you would ever throw at it. Now, back before there was, all this professional sound gear that bands would take on stage, a lot of musicians used amps just like this for their concerts, and one of those was Jerry Garcia and the Grateful Dead. They started out with the MC350, and this is a tube monoblock amp, another very rare amp, but it was a monstrous amp, and it just didn't get enough power for what Jerry Garcia wanted for his concerts. Luckily, right around the same time, McIntosh released this MC 2300, and Jerry Garcia said, wow, that just might be enough power to do what I need. Now, they fell in love with the MC 2300 when a concert at Watkins Glen Raceway had unexpectedly grew to over 600,000 fans, and they actually had to take a helicopter out of the concert to McIntosh, grab some of these amps off of the production line, and bring them back just so the audience had enough power to hear the music. Now, after getting the MC 2300, it took a few years to design what would be one of the largest hi-fi stage setups ever built. In February of 1973, the Grateful Dead revealed the Wall of Sound. This was a massive setup that consisted of 586 JBL speakers, 54 Electro Voice tweeters, powered by 48 McIntosh 2300s. This all came in at a price of roughly $275,000 back in 1973. Now, what does that equate to today? $1.7 million. Now, they finally brought this and unveiled it at the Cal Palace in March of 1974 to a huge ovation from fans. Concertgoers even felt like they were on the stage with the band, and frankly, probably a lot of other things as well, because I'm sure they were under a lot of influences. So moving around the Wall of Sound from different musical venues was not an easy task at all. It took 4 semi-trailers to haul around 75 tons of amps, speakers, tweeters, and subwoofers just to set these up at each concert venue. Now, the Grateful Dead pioneered what we see today at concerts, all the big pro equipment, but the way they had built it was not really sustainable. So over time, they would blow tweeters like crazy. It was costing a lot of money, and the Wall of Sound didn't really last that long just because it was a logistical nightmare. In October 1974, the Grateful Dead finally retired the Wall of Sound due to rising production costs, fuel costs, and other personnel issues. This amp would still be used in people's homes and other private listening sessions from there on out around the world. It's truly a amp of grand scale, to put it least. Like 140 pounds, I cannot lift this by myself. We actually had a good amount of trouble putting this on the table. I'm surprised it's able to even rise and lower, because that is a lot of weight. Now, speaking of using these at home, recently there was an auction of all of Jerry Garcia's equipment, and one thing included in that auction was the original Budman amp. That's the 2300 that he held close to his heart and used all throughout his career and his personal life. This ended up selling at auction for $380,000, and that was late 2021. So we were all watching it as that auction kind of went through, and we're like wondering what it would go for. It came with the original dead road case, and it was just a really cool listing. And they had a lot of other equipment available as well, but it's interesting to see that that Budman amp went to somebody, and what, you know, pretty cool thing to show people in your house. But I'm sure it's going to end up in a museum, Mikey. Now let's take a look at what's on the front of the massive McIntosh MC 2300. So to start off, everything is just overdone. It's larger than life. And of course, we're going to start with those two giant meters on the front of this amplifier with that classic McIntosh glow that really sets this apart from anything else that came out in the early 70s. Nothing else featured anything like that. Another staple of this amp are the giant handlebars that are on each side, which they honestly don't help with picking this up too much because there's none on the back. It's still one of the most awkward amps that I've ever picked up, because even when me and Mikey were moving it to put it on here, you couldn't get a grip behind it. Your only grip was right here on the massive handles. So they help, but it probably would have helped more if they had them on the back. That's something that the likes of Sansui and Pioneer would later add on their monster receivers, so that if you laid it down flat, it wouldn't break the controls on the back or the inputs on the back. It's definitely a two-man job, and you're not just going to really lift those two handlebars right up and carry the whole thing, because if you're like me and most other people, you're not a huge bodybuilder, and 140 pounds is just too much of a deadlift with an amp. Now, the front finish on the MC2300, of course, has the McIntosh logo, so you can show off to all your friends your new toy. But you can't get past just this solid construction. It's like just solid steel all the way through, to where I guess if you drop this 140-pound monster on the corner, it would bend it, but not much else is going to really hurt that rack-mountable front faceplate. In case you forget, across the front, it tells you that each channel is 300 watts. No questions asked, you can see it right on the front. And underneath of that is all the controls. It starts over on the right with the right and the left gain controls. That's going to control the volume that's coming out of each amp section. Now next is the meter range, so that you can control the amount of fluctuation in those giant meters. And of course there is a large power switch right down here so that you can turn it on and off. Now, in case you don't know how you should hook this amp up into your system, because it's not as self-explanatory as one might think, there is a large chart on the top that shows you exactly what to do depending what you're hooking up to it and what speakers you're going to be driving with it. The other thing it shows on top is it does show some of the performance aspects down the bottom. So it shows your output level, your signal to noise ratio, your AC input, your input level, the distortion, and the rated power output. So if you are going to do it in mono, it does tell you that you're getting 600 watts as a mono block. Now I want to go back to wanting to have these in your house, and I want to go back to the wall of sound, because there's actually someone who has rebuilt the wall of sound to scale in their home. Anthony Kasha out of Connecticut has recreated the wall of sound in quarter scale. It measures about 10 feet wide and 14 feet in width, and just what an incredible accomplishment to be able to build this. We got some behind the scenes pictures here for you guys to see how it was built. Now, not only did he build the quarter scale replica, but he is currently building a 1/2 scale replica of the wall of sound. This will be, of course, much bigger than that quarter scale. And he even has a GoFundMe to help with the project, and he has told me once he's done that 1/2 scale, he's going to go all the way. He's going to do the full scale wall of sound. And that's just something cool that I wanted to share with you guys, because frankly, when we were looking at everything online, trying to do research for this video, we came across that, and we just thought it was a fun thing. So one of these days, maybe we'll go check that out in person and give you guys a glimpse of what that scaled down replica looks like. Now, we tried to get this story as good as we can and tell you about the Wall of Sound and about the McIntosh 2300, but if you have stuff to add, be sure to add it in the comments to help us further this story and help people understand more about the Wall of Sound and the Grateful Dead, because, you know, we're not deadheads. This is really our first venture into the Wall of Sound story, so hopefully we did a good job. I hope you guys enjoyed the Giant MC 2300, because it was super difficult to get onto this table. Ready? Mm-hmm. And then it's going to go right in the center. Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. Is your fan still... Ooh. Yeah.
I like how it's laid out. All the output transistors are here. These boards unplugged, so if you got to service it, you just pull them out. Makes it nice.
So these are all...
Outputs, yeah. And these are your 2 amp drivers. This is your left channel, that's your right channel.
How many watts is this?
300 per channel.
300 per channel?
Yeah.
It's huge.
That'll light a room up. You'd light it up at 20 watts a channel, this thing. With that much, with these big transformers, this thing's got to kick butt. This thing's like 200 pounds. But the meters work good. I mean, you know, it's clean. The audio looks clean on the scope. Looks really good.
Yeah, that's a wild amp. What do you got? Look at the size. Did you see the fans on the back of this thing? Is this connected? Can I turn this a little bit?
Yeah.
To keep this thing from overheating.
Yeah, they don't come on.
I can't even slide it.
Yeah, it's very heavy.
It has fans here that are just massive, massive fans.
Yeah, I got to take them out and clean them.
When do they kick on?
When it gets hot.
When it gets whenever it gets hot.
Yeah, once it gets warm enough, it'll come on. Right
That's
now
wild.
it's on. Right now I'm not pushing it hard enough to heat it up. I like it though, man. I bet this thing sounds terrific.
Oh yeah.
Just judging on the way the waveforms look, they look nice.
Well, you were there at the Wall of Sound, right?
Yeah.
That's crazy. You flipped it over?
Yeah, I had to, man.
How many people did that take? You did it yourself.
Almost 40,000 microfarad caps.
That's ridiculous. Look at that. Those are some large caps.
Oh yeah.
Massive
Plus
caps.
you got the little can guy here.
Yeah, and a couple little pots. You got the pots underneath here. And
these are your meter drive circuits here for the meters.
It's pretty cool how they didn't solder the wires in. They're all actually just with connectors.
That's why I like McIntosh.
Yeah, it was made back when it was made really nice.
Yeah. When it was relatively serviceable.
Yeah. When it wasn't complete sheets of glass everywhere.
Yeah.
So, pretty cool.